This is a Fairmount about Fairmount, the new Visions Civic League podcast. Hear from guests that matter to you. Real people, real talk, real facts.
Hello, neighbors. I'm excited to be sitting with Danny Avula. Danny has actually been serving in the Richmond area for 2 decades in various roles, public health, pediatrics, just engaging with his neighbors on his block. And I've actually known him for about 16 years. And so, Danny, I'm excited to get some time with you. And my question for you is, what does the community need to know today?
Thanks, Paul. Great to see you. Probably the biggest thing we need to know is we've got an election coming up in 40 some odd days. I think that there's a lot of excitement right now, certainly for the presidential election, but that all of the layers of local leadership are also getting elected. We have a mayor's race, city council race, school board race, and that you can actually go vote right now. Voting started on September 20th, and I went out and voted on the 20th and have had team members be out there during the week. So a lot of really exciting things happening right now. But yes, I'm running for mayor. That's the thing I would like listeners to know about.
And what's interesting is it's a pretty interesting mayoral race, and everyone's bringing different things to the table. What does Danny Avula bring to the table, and why should people care about you being in this race?
Yeah, I think, if I were to boil it down, trust, competency, and experience. I think my connection is particularly to this community. I've lived in the East End for over 20 years now. I moved to Richmond originally in 2000 to go to medical school, but we decided to stay because we fell in love with the city, and we fell in love with the city's story and the complexity of being the capital of the Confederacy and grappling with racial issues and really trying to live out racial healing moving forward. And that was the story that we became attracted to. And so back in 2004, we moved into North Churchill. My wife started teaching at Chimborazo Elementary. And then over the last 20 years, we have built community in the East End, and it's been our community. We've had 5 kids who have all gone to Richmond Public Schools and who have all grown up in this neighborhood. And so, I would say that there is a trust factor that comes with having been in it and built relationships over years and been in the work. As public health director, so much of my work was expanding access to care, serving healthcare needs of the most vulnerable members of our community, and building connection and trust over time. I've also, had some pretty big roles. When I was public health director in 2020 and COVID hit, I was leading both the Richmond and Henrico health departments. And so I became kind of a de facto leader of the regional COVID response. And so every day I was showing up in front of the media, sharing what we know, what we didn't know, but also using our best evidence base to say, hey, here's what we as a community ought to be doing right now. And then that went well enough that the governor asked me to come and lead the statewide COVID response in 2021. And so I became the leader of the vaccination effort statewide. And during that time, we went from 50th in the country to top 10 most vaccinated states in the country. And it only happened through deep connection and partnership with communities, with the private sector, but also being really focused on operations and outcomes. And so that's the work that I want to do for the city.
Yeah. So you're bringing something interesting to the table, right? You both have this micro element that you have lived here, your neighbors, and you have this macro element where you have engaged statewide in these programs. When you think of the one of the areas on a micro level and one of the areas on a macro level that you were most excited to press into if you were to become mayor, what would that micro and macro thing be?
Yeah, I don't know which ones are micro or macro because they all feel like pretty big and weighty issues, right? But I think what's clear is when I run around the city and talk to residents all over the community, affordable housing, investing in education, and creating safety in our communities are the 3 issues that come up over and over and over again and have to be the priorities for the next mayor. And that's fairly consistent among, you're going to hear the same thing from all the mayoral candidates because that's the thing that the residents of the city are crying out for. Now, I believe that all of that is rooted in a really well-run, trustworthy local government. And I think what makes me different as a candidate here is I'm the only one of the candidates who's actually run an organization, who's run a governmental organization, and who's done that at scale, right? As the health director of Richmond and Henrico, we had about a $20 million budget and 350 employees, and we're doing really good both program and service delivery work, but also policy work. But then as Commissioner of Social Services, I ran a $2.6 billion agency with 1,800 employees and had to really do the work of culture change and building a team and working on process improvement to actually deliver services more effectively. And so, when I think about what does the city need and what do we need to focus on in the next chapter, it's doing that, roll your sleeves up, work with City Hall, and making sure that we're investing in technology so that people can pay their bills online, and that we're investing in culture so that someone kind of picks up the phone and wants to solve your problem when you need to call City Hall. And that is hard organizational work that I feel like my 15 years of executive leadership experience have actually allowed me to build a skill set around.
Yeah. So you're bringing to the table having 20 years of actually being a resident here. You're bringing to the table having this executive leadership piece. You're also someone who has spent years and years in pediatrics. What has that done to give you a unique skill set or vantage point that would allow you to serve as a mayor well?
Yeah, Paul, I think it's kept me connected to people on the ground, connected to real issues. I mean, the reason that I've continued to practice over the course of my career, even though I've had, these organizational leadership roles, that like seeing patients and hearing what families are struggling with, whether it's the basics of keeping a roof over your head or having food security, having access to healthy foods, or in the midst of the COVID crisis, actually seeing adolescents get hospitalized for psychiatric illness at a record pace. That kind of real touch point with people has made me more effective as an organizational leader, more effective as a policymaker. And it's part of the DNA of how I've led organizations, that unless we are connected to people on the ground, the voices who are being impacted by the decisions we make, we're missing something. And so I think that practice of pediatrics has been one of the ways that I've stayed really connected and grounded.
And there's so much more we could talk about, but, I feel like any election season, but this one in particular can feel daunting for people. So how would you encourage Richmonders in this season to not be daunted, but to be excited?
Yeah, it is really exciting to think about the next chapter of the city because while there's a lot that we need to work on, there's also a lot that has gone really well for our city, and we should celebrate that. We are a more inviting and inclusive place than we've ever been. The work that's been done to build out parks and to build out the riverfront it's a gem of a city. But we do need to do more to make sure that residents can stay in the communities that they love and that they've been a part of for decades. We do need to do more to invest in schools to make sure that people have good options for their kids to either track to a career or to higher education. And that's the work moving forward. So I'm super excited about the opportunity to usher in the next chapter of Richmond's life and to make this the kind of city where everybody really sees themselves and can see themselves staying in for the next 2 decades.
Yeah. Well, let's say somebody is inspired by what you've said or curious to learn more. How can the community connect with you or connect with your campaign?
Well, our website is dannyformayor.com. And so that would be the easiest place. And it's very intuitive about if you want to sign up to volunteer with the campaign, if you want to sign up to work shifts at the poll, if you want a yard sign at your house, or of course, if you want to donate. These efforts, campaigns take resources. And so we've had some great TV ads that have gone out and we've got some more coming. And so those are all different ways you can help, and would really love everybody to lean in these last 40 days leading up to election. Yeah.
Any final words for the community?
Just my gratitude. I mean, this particular audience is my community. I've lived in the East End for 20 years, and we've seen some really great development happen. we've seen some challenges to that development. And so know that I will be a leader because of my experience having lived in the East End. I will be a leader who's really focused on how do we preserve the diversity and connection that so many of us who moved to the city or who've grown up in the city yearn for. And that's the North Star, making sure that this is a community where nobody gets left behind.
Well, Danny, mayoral race aside, thank you for the decades of service you've given to the community and to Richmond. And thank you for making space for sharing with us today. And thank you for helping us to be neighbors, helping neighbors.
My pleasure, Paul. Great to be with you.